Good day, everyone, and welcome to this special investigative edition of Japan Journal. I'm your host, Mal Adams. Wells Fargo, one of the leading consumer banks in the United States, was hit with a $185 million fine recently for forging customer signatures and illegally opening accounts for credit cards under their names. Wells Fargo headaches are quickly piling up. The bank is now facing an investigation and hearing from the powerful House Financial Services Committee on the opening of millions of fake accounts. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau blames the activity on a culture that promoted aggressive sales tactics and says the bank is being rightfully scrutinized in the press for its illegal actions. The chairman of the House Financial Services Committee revealed it is launching an investigation and said Wells Fargo CEO John Stumpf will be called on to testify at a hearing later this month. Additionally, the House Financial Services Committee sent a letter to Wells Fargo requesting documents related to the bank's controversial sales tactics and that corporate officers be made available for transcribed interviews. Although the Wells Fargo scandal is not new, it is currently getting increased coverage in the news with the announcement of the upcoming federal investigation. The city of Los Angeles filed a landmark lawsuit against Wells Fargo in 2015, and the scandal was first brought to light by the Los Angeles Times, which in 2013 chronicled the pressure cooker sales culture at Wells Fargo that led to the illegal activity. Wells Fargo is now grappling with further fallout. Japan Journal, this broadcast, has learned that the Department of Justice has recently issued subpoenas to Wells Fargo as part of a federal investigation. And on Tuesday, September 20th, Wells Fargo CEO Stumpf will be in the hot seat with Elizabeth Warren and her colleagues on the Senate Banking Committee when they hold a Wells Fargo hearing. Warren has already suggested she's skeptical Wells Fargo management was unaware of the illegal activity of this scale. Several months ago, and prior to the recent exposure of this massive fraud perpetrated by Wells Fargo, Japan Journal has coincidentally been conducting an investigation of its own on a separate but clearly related matter. It is the case of longtime Japan resident James Norwood and his family. Norwood contacted Japan Journal to launch an investigation into an alleged case of fraud against his deceased mother, who held 2 banking accounts with Wells Fargo. His mother had obtained a POD agreement with the bank, which required the funds in her accounts to be transferred upon her death to the charity of her choice, the Arizona Humane Society. Norwood claims that this was never done, and is seeking answers from Wells Fargo as to why. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, James Norwood is a longtime acquaintance and personal friend of this reporter, and someone I've known for over 30 years here in Japan. After hearing his story, I agreed to take on this investigation in an attempt to obtain justice for him and his family. We begin our coverage with an explanation of what a POD actually is. Simply stated, it means payable on death. It is an agreement between a bank or a credit union and a client that designates beneficiaries to receive all the client's assets. The immediate transfer of assets is to be triggered by the death of the client. POD accounts are created by filling out the proper forms at your bank or credit union. It is a cost-free service that allows for the transfer of all checking and savings accounts, security deposits, savings bonds, and other deposit certificates. The agreement offers a quick means of asset disbursement, mainly to avoid the probate process, which can take several months. In the case of Norwood's deceased mother, this apparently never happened. Here then is our report. In Pursuit of Justice, a case of fraud at Wells Fargo Bank.
This is going to be resolved. We will get justice.
Tonight, a special investigative report. In Pursuit of Justice.
I ask you this. When did my mother die? I believe I stated that. And how long did you hold on to this money? I'm addressing this to Wells Fargo directly.
A question of bank fraud by a major U.S. banking institution.
My mother passed away 2010. We continue to receive these statements of the current status of those accounts that my mother had in the bank from you directly for a period of 5 years.
The family of a deceased mother wants answers.
Now, anyone can deduct that a POD is a POD, payable upon death. It does not mean pay after 5 years. It means payable upon death. You only die once.
In Pursuit of Justice, a Japan Journal investigative report.
So, what were you doing with this money? What is your intentions? It's obvious that you intended to fraudulently take this money. We have the proof right here.
Tonight, show us the money.
First, I'd like to introduce myself. I am James Norwood, and I am creating this video in the attempt to obtain justice for a family member has passed away. That member would be my mother, and she was a victim of a fraud, a scam from a well-established bank, and I and my family are seeking justice for what they have perpetrated. And I'd like to bring attention to this blatant fraudulent action to the public eye, because I have no choice. Of course, naturally, I have went through all channels possible to get justice, as in getting or trying to obtain a lawyer or get just about anyone in a professional status to at least hear the case. But we failed to get anyone to actually pay attention, especially anyone with the proper authority. So my family has no choice but to go through the process of bringing this particular case to the media. So I've taken this time out to have this video produced so I can get this message across. And I am not ashamed or restricted in any way in presenting my case. As such, I will be naming names. And to start off, the bank we have in question is Wells Fargo Bank. It's a very common, well-known bank, I believe, globally, not just in the United States. And my mother had 2 accounts in this bank. And those counts were assigned to a POD. And a POD is payable upon death. And upon my mother's death, those accounts were to be paid to her requested charity, which was the Arizona Humane Society. And for a period from the time of her death, which was in January of 2010, till up until 2014, that POD, which was the two accounts my mother had at this particular bank that were registered by her legally as a POD, as I mentioned, payable upon death. And to explain that a little further, payable upon death means, as it states, payable upon death, which means when a party has the authority to initiate certain funds to another party, they can legally draw up this document and create a POD and have such a transaction occur. And in my mother's case, this did not occur. For a period of over 5 years. So essentially what I'm saying is, my mother had these accounts assigned to a POD. She had been with this bank for a long period of her life, trusted this bank for a long period of her life, and they just blatantly, fraudulently did not carry out her wishes. I have proof of this, and I will demonstrate and illustrate the proof within this video. So I would like to get the point across that this fraudulent action that occurred towards my family perhaps has also happened to others. And I would like to appeal to those families who feel they have been done an injustice. And perhaps if we coordinated our efforts, you too also may be able to acquire the closure and justice that you desire for your loved one. So I would like to perhaps go into some detail, but once again, I want everyone to perfectly understand that this was an illegal action. I can prove this. And a POD is as it states. The law requires that the POD is carried out. And I must also mention that my family is not challenging the law of the POD. In fact, we are challenging that the law was not carried out in this particular case for my mother. And we have the said proof. This bank intentionally did not carry out their obligations and the wishes of my mother. She passed away, as I mentioned, in 2010. I believe that's 2009. And at that point, my sister and I had supplied them because she had visited their branch and had brought them proof, the official certificate of death. And they, at that time, were required to follow through, which they did not for a number of years. So basically those accounts stayed dormant in their bank, growing interest, which they profited off of, and they did not carry out the POD. Getting now into detail about where I'm going with all of this, I'm going to present, as you can see there, this is the official from the state of Arizona death certificate of my mother, where it states here she had passed away, filed here, date of death, January 9th, 2010. Official, stamped, state of Arizona death certificate. Now, here are statements sent to my family periodically, clearly dated much later than the passing of my mother. Here, at this point in time, this particular official statement from them, Wells Fargo High Yield Savings, dated March 1st, 2010. With the address, everything pertaining to our family, including a statement of the POD located in the bottom right-hand corner. And this POD still addresses where this charity should go. And we repeatedly, periodically, throughout all these years, received these such documents from this bank, indicating that the funds were still there. After more time had passed, now looking at this particular document, this is dated September 1st, 2010. Clearly, here in very bold print, it has all the pertinent information, illustrating it's still POD and who is supposed to receive the funds. And clearly it shows the sum and balance of the funds still being in the account. Later we received other statements, and at this time the statements no longer read, or read, the heading from their official statements with their bank logo. I had mentioned it was Wells Fargo High Yield Savings statement. But after a period of time, that particular account and those particular statements were changed, and they had began now as a PMA account, and it still clearly lets one know that the account is still there. So my family is having a problem understanding why we would receive these said accounts and statements when my mother had clearly passed away long ago. And a POD, again, I once reinstate, is payable upon death. It means immediately this transaction had or should have been carried out, and it wasn't. So I ask you this: when did my mother die? I believe I stated that. And how long did you hold on to this money? I'm addressing this to Wells Fargo directly. My mother passed away 2010. We continue to receive these statements of the current status of those accounts that my mother had in the bank from you directly for a period of 5 years. Now, anyone can deduct that a POD is a POD, payable upon death. It does not mean pay after 5 years. It means payable upon death. You only die once. So, what were you doing with this money? What is your intentions? It's obvious that you intended to fraudulently take this money. We have the proof right here. And throughout this 5 years, this challenge, this debacle, whatever you want to call it, we continued to address you of why and what you were doing with this money. At one point, you didn't even know that my mother had passed away, when a member of my family had distinctly brought you proof, the death certificate, proving as such, immediately after my mother passed away, because I and my sister, we represent the estate of my mother. So, of course, we did the due diligence, but you did not. In fact, you wanted to have my sister arrested for being so persistent. You went as far as to acquire my sister's current address when she had moved from one state to another, when she did not acknowledge that information. You found her and continued to deliver the statements. So it's obvious that you somehow had some plan to take this money, embezzle, whatever you want to call it. So we're going to bring this out as we are right now, and will continue to the public domain so they can ask questions why. Perhaps they have accounts in your bank and ask questions why this wasn't carried out. You went as far as to give the excuse that you didn't know where such funds were to be paid, where the POD was to be paid out, when it's deliberately, distinctly written on these statements for 5 years where it should go. There's only one location, coincidentally, where it should go. There's not several of them, there's only one. And you continually to print that on these statements. So when we contact you, you basically shunned us out. Your legal department wouldn't talk to us. No one would address us about this issue. And we know for a fact that each of your respective branches, including your head branch in California, all knew of this particular case. So we want to know why this was done. So it's obvious that this is not right. So we will continue our effort to get justice. So the statements clearly state where this money should go. And apparently it did not. Did not go for 5 years. And it was assigned to go to a certain charity. And this charity never received it. In fact, this charity never knew it existed. So, my family, of course, we can't understand what is going on. We then attempt to contact both, again, Wells Fargo and the charity. And I might as well mention that charity because later on I have to go after them too. But the Arizona Humane Society was assigned this POD. And from contacting them, our family contacting them, we discovered that they never knew this POD existed. Can you imagine this? For 5 years, this bank never told the charity, the party to receive these funds under the POD law, that this account, this money existed. For 5 years. I mean, it just boggles the mind. But it leads you to understand that this bank wanted to steal this money. It's point blank. So we will get justice. We have the proof. We are going to go after this. And I have it all. Copies of the emails, conversations between my family and their legal departments of each. You know, and it's all written here. You know, clearly says, like this last statement I could read, it says, AHS, which is Arizona Humane Society, has not received any payment from these accounts from Wells Fargo. And I have names. I have all that. So it's right here. So there's a lot of explaining to do for the reasons, which I can't get my head around. It's very obvious a POD is a POD, and 5 years is a long time to make up your mind what you're going to do, knowingly, blatantly breaking the law and taking advantage of a family that's grieving. So this is going to be resolved. We will get justice.
Tonight, a special investigative report. In Pursuit of Justice.